Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. I'm thrilled to see you all again. I hope each of you is having a wonderful day or evening, wherever you are. Let's explore some fascinating stories and rich emotions together in this video. Labor pains? Go to the hospital. I'm traveling with my mom. Call me when the baby is born. My husband took off to Hawaii with my mother-in-law, leaving me in pain. A few days later, he called me to ask if the baby was born. I told him the truth. Huh? I heard his dumb voice, so I hung up the phone. I am Laura, a 28 years old office worker. My husband Harry is also 28, and we got married 2 years ago after an office romance. My in-laws live in the next town, but Harry was the second son, so he told me before we got married that he didn't think it would mean living with his parents. When I asked him about other details, he told me that his mother was traditional and prefers her first son. And there was a considerable difference in the treatment of Harry and his older brother. So Harry did not seem to like much of Emily. In fact, at the time our wedding greetings, my mother-in-law said, "The eldest son will take over this house, so don't count on the inheritance of the family." I had never counted on it in the first place, but after hearing this, I had not a good impression of my in-laws. At the time, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law lived alone at my parents' house because my father-in-law was working alone overseas, and when we visited them, my mother-in-law was like, "I have to cook dinner and do laundry for your brother, so can you go home as soon as you are done here?" Harry apologized to me on the way home every time for his mother-in-law's attitude. However, a turning point came to us. Harry's elder brother had eloped with his fiancé copyrightee and disappeared. My mother-in-law had a big problem with my eldest son's fiancé copyrightee, and said something like, "Ask the eldest son's wife and my daughter-in-law." She pressured her and made fun of her. My mother-in-law was very much against the marriage, but her first son decided to leave my mother-in-law to protect his fiancé copyrightee's mental health and to marry her peacefully. This led the mother-in-law to turn the brand of her affection toward Harry. At first, I didn't like the fact that she was leaning on me because my brother was gone. It is like as if I replaced my brother. And he refused to accept such an attitude from his mother. However, his mother tried to win Harry over in every way she could, and Harry gradually softened his attitude toward her. And so, a few months after the eldest son disappeared, he was saying, "My brother is the worst kind of man. He has caused trouble to my mom so many times. And now that is how he is returning the favor. I'm ashamed to be a brother to such a man." I was glad that his relationship with my mother-in-law had been restored, but I began to feel a little uneasy about him taking her side any longer. Harry and I were in the same company, so we had the same days off, and we often spent holidays together. However, Harry began to go out to his mother's house every holiday as his mother invited him. I feel sorry for my mom because my dad is having an affair and my brother is away, so I want to spend my holiday with my mom as much as possible. That's what he told me. I understand how you feel, but I want you to spend more time with me as a couple. We go back to the same house on weekends, and it would be fine if we could at least use the time off for mom. I mean, Laura, come with me. Have you forgotten how you were told to get the hell out of there before, or how you were treated so evilly? Besides, your mother wasn't very welcoming to me. Things were different then. So how long are you going to talk about the past? Harry's comments surprised me, but I had seen his change and decided to accompany Harry on his visit to my parents-in-law's house in the faint hope that perhaps my mother-in-law's attitude towards me might have changed as well. On the following holiday, when I visited my in-law's house with Harry, I realized that I had been naive. My mother-in-law met us at the front door, and upon seeing my face, she blatantly frowned at me. I immediately realized that I was not welcome. But Harry, who was completely oblivious to the situation, told his mother smilingly that I wanted to spend the holiday with him, so that's why he brought me along. "Oh, Laura, you must be tired from work. Why don't you take a good rest?" "I'm working too, Mom. And Laura has enough energy to play around, so don't worry about it." Harry's good-tempered words made my mother-in-law smile as if she was up to something. And this expression was not my imagination, but rather, my mother-in-law began to say various things to me. "My body has been hurting lately, and I can't even clean properly. Laura, can you clean the house for me?" At first, it was just this kind of request, but gradually her demands escalated. She began to send me out to buy groceries, arrange gifts for relatives, and even clean my mother-in-law's friend's house. While I was dealing with my mother-in-law's requests, Harry and my mother-in-law were firmly enjoying their holidays, going out to eat, to the movies, to massage, and so on. After the first few times, I told Harry, I'll stop going to your parents' house because all I do is help your mother and you go out with her, so there's no point in going. As a wife, you could at least help out at your husband's parents' house. Besides, we'd go to their house and leave their house together. And in return, I'm taking you out to dinner. So he refused my suggestion of not accompanying him to his mother's house. He says dinner, but it was only the same fast food restaurant. However, I couldn't disagree with his opinion because I indeed am the daughter-in-law and ended up helping out at my in-laws' house on my days off, which meant I couldn't rest at all. The reason I didn't want to go to my in-laws' house was not only this but also something else. Mindless words from my mother-in-law and Harry. You were so cheerful when you were playing with me, so stop being so grumpy when you were helping my mother. Harry's ex-girlfriends used to smile at me all the time. The only reason you couldn't come to dinner with us in the first place was that you were too slow with your cleaning and stuff. How can you do your job like that? Harry and my mother-in-law not only blamed me for my work but also my parents. How in the world did your parents educate Laura to be so slow at house chores? Even the last time I asked to arrange the gifts for my relatives, you chose something that made me feel as if our house was poor. I had been asked to send gifts to her relatives and my mother-in-law had asked me to pay for them. You always live on Harry's money, so you should pay for at least on an occasion like this. She forced me to do so. We both work, so we live on our salaries together. Are you saying that Harry's salary isn't enough? No, it's not like that. My mother-in-law and I had a conversation in which she twisted my words, so I gave up the dialogue with her and followed her instructions about the gift. However, when one of the relatives who received the gift commented to me to thank me, my mother-in-law now started complaining about the kind of gift of what I sent them. My salary is not that much, so I couldn't send anything too expensive. But if it should be appropriate for you, I still think it would be better for you to choose the gift and pay for it from now on, as expected. I was also mad at my mother-in-law's unreasonable complaint, so I talked back. My mother-in-law still wanted to say something. That's why I hate poor people. And so she ended the conversation. My mother-in-law seemed to have told the story to Harry. Why did you say to Mom you want money from her? Harry was not in a good mood. She didn't like the gift I arranged for her relatives and called me poor, so I just asked her to make her own arrangements next time. My mom just tried to teach you how to get along with your relatives as a wife later on, so she asked you to do so. I've never met these relatives, and they didn't even congratulate me on my marriage. I can't send such an expensive gift to many households, and who is only alternative to my husband. Harry sighed deliberately in response to my reaction and said, I'll pay from now on, and you will arrange it next time again. No, I won't. I simply answered him, went into the bedroom, and broke off the conversation. I had somehow sensed that my relationship with Harry was cooling down, and I knew I had to do something about it. But soon, I found out that I was pregnant. When I told Harry about the pregnancy, he was so happy that I was surprised by his reaction. I'm going to work harder for you and the child, so if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know right away. He stopped going back to my in-laws' house for a while, and did house chores on his days off to take care of me, which made me very happy in the early stages of my pregnancy, as I had been feeling lonely about Harry's attitude. And then, I reported to my mother-in-law as well, as my father-in-law, who was working alone overseas. I'm coming home once to celebrate. He was going to visit me. My mother-in-law was very eager to know the sex of the child, and she repeatedly said, since this is your first child, you must give birth to a healthy boy and raise him to be the heir to our family. When I found out the sex of the child was a boy, I wondered whether or not to tell Harry and my mother-in-law. Then, when I was in a stable stage of pregnancy, I visited my parents' home again, and at that time, my mother-in-law said, if it's a boy, we'll take him in, and I'll raise him myself. My grandchildren will be happier if they are raised by me who raised my two sons well, than by a mother like you. Harry was also impressed by her words. Laura, you have to work, and if my mom takes care of the child, you can focus on your work and work hard again. I felt a sense of crisis at this time and decided to say, the child is a girl. I immediately lied. Then, my mother-in-law looked at me with obvious displeasure and said, then, you should take care of it yourselves because I have no obligation to raise a girl. Next time, have a boy. I was stunned by this statement from my mother-in-law, but I remember feeling somewhat relieved that she would not interfere with me in any way. After this pregnancy report, my mother-in-law requested I help her do the chores. Since you got in a stable period, come and clean our house. However, I avoided this request by lying that I was suffering from morning sickness, and I did my best to avoid any contact with my mother-in-law during the pregnancy. Since my mom is going to be a grandmother, it would be better for you to have a good relationship with her now for the sake of the child, wouldn't it? You're saying something like this so easily, but she hates me. I answered shortly to Harry, who once again began to take my mother-in-law's side, and Harry started going out to his parents' house again every other weekend. And this, although they were so close to the due date. Once the baby is born, I won't be able to spend as much time with my mom, so I want to save some time to spend alone with her while I still can. They even made plans for a trip to Hawaii. The baby will be born soon, and we cannot predict the due date so exactly, so please don't go on a trip overseas. I asked Harry repeatedly, but he would not listen to me at all, and I decided to tell my parents about the whole situation in case of an emergency. The reason I had not talked to my parents before was that if I told them, they would surely recommend divorce, and I wanted to avoid that option because I was hopeful of repairing the situation for the better. Then, a few weeks before my due date, I had tremendous contractions. Coincidentally, Harry and my mother-in-law were scheduled to leave for Hawaii in the evening, and my contractions started before noon, so I felt bad that their trip would be cancelled, but I asked Harry to take me to the hospital because I was having contractions. Harry rushed to take me to the hospital. Does that mean you are going to have the baby today? He asked the doctor. It's prodromal labor, so it's not going to happen right away, but in a few hours. He heard the doctor's reply to